Hi, and welcome to my podcast for parents. My name is Ann Maxwell, and I'm inviting you to a space where you get to be who you are, not only as a parent, but as the amazing being you actually are. Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode number 2 of my For Parents podcast. My name is Ann Maxwell, and here's the deal. I have a little story for you. This podcast is called Connection. And I've been meaning to record a podcast on connection for the last 2 weeks, and I haven't been able to do it. And finally, I did it the other day, and it was so awful that when I listened to the replay, I had to turn it off after 8 minutes, and it just made me so upset. And I was telling my friend Chelsey, who you guys all met last week when she did the sort of quasi interview with me, and she was so sweet. And she said, listen, you could do this. You've got this. You've talked about connection with me, and me being Chelsey, and Charlie, her son, forever. And then she said, do you want me to be on with you? And I'm like, yes, please. I hung up from our phone conversation and just started crying. And we had laughed about the fact that I was unable to do a solo podcast on connection, because isn't that actually what connection is all about?
Yeah,
right?
if there's ever a podcast to not be able to do by yourself, it might be on the topic of connecting with others.
It is so funny. And the thing that came to me also after we hung up the other day, Chelsea, is my dad died when I was 17. And the poem that my mom read at his, like a gathering service that friends and family did within the week of his death at our house. And she read the poem, No Man is an Island by John Donne. And that's what came to me. It's like, no, we're not islands. Like, we are interconnected beings and bodies that actually can either thrive or self-destruct based on the connection, based on the quality of the connection, right? Like, all connection, a lot of people define connection as feeling heard and seen and understood and all that. And some of that can be really destructive.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I jumped on top of you. Can
No,
you circle back to when you said quality of connection?
Yeah.
I think that is really interesting, and I'm not sure what you mean.
So, quality of connection, I'm just going to talk about myself personally. I was married for 20 years, and my ex-husband and I connected in a way that was loving and kind, where we were the better for the relationship. We were better together with it than we were without it. And over time, that changed, and it can change. The marriage ended not on a vengeful, I hate you note. We still love each other profoundly, and we're really different. We are in such different space right now. And when you stop being able to be who you are in a relationship, and you start acting like somebody that you're not for whatever reason, good, bad, and ugly, that's when the quality of the connection changes. And anytime you eliminate yourself from the creation of the connection, and I mean by you, Dr. Seuss talks about there is no one on earth that is youer than you, that no one youer than you, that you of you. When you begin to discount it, discredit it, push it aside, or create it as somebody that you're not, that's when the quality of connection, I think, becomes destructive, not only to you, but also to the other person, because all of a sudden you're functioning as a lie, as something that's not actually true. Does that make sense?
So cool. Yes. And why it makes so much sense to be talking about it here, because how many parents are youer than you, or them or than them? Like, I know, as from being a mom, that's a struggle sometimes to be really connected to yourself and be a parent. So how cool it is that you're bringing it up in this space around for parents and connection, because it's how do you connect with other people if you're not connected to yourself?
Right.
And connect to your kids or your partner or whatever.
Right. And so what is connection to yourself. I think I talked about it a little bit on the first episode, but oftentimes kids will develop a series of symptoms that will get them in to see a therapist, which in many of the cases, those kids actually knew that their parents needed me more than they did,
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And in one of those such cases, there was a mom who was really lovely. She was so sweet. And the way the therapy would evolve would I'd talk with the parents first or the parent first, and then I'd meet the child. And then, we the child and I would play, and the parent would either observe or be in the other room. And then at the end of the play, I'd say, "Do you have just a second?" I'd ask permission from the kid. "Is it okay if I talk with your mom just for a couple minutes?" And they go, "Yeah." And we'd already set out the rules about privacy. What stays in here, what's said in here stays in here. And your mom is going to want to know on in some way how you're doing. And sometimes I would talk with the kids about that. Like that. That's connection with the kid, like not running them over, not discounting them because they're a kid. But anyway, so back to the mom. The mom would come in the room, and oftentimes it would turn into my child's doing really well. Can I come in and see you? And I'd say yes. And so this was one of those moments. Just appeared lost, like sort of rudderless. And I said, "If you weren't a parent, who would you be? What would your life be like?" And she said, "I have no idea, probably a wife." And I said, "Okay. And if you weren't a wife, who would you be?" Right. And she said, "I actually have no clue who I am, absent those labels of colleague, mom, wife, daughter, friend." Right. And this is a lot of why I wanted to do this podcast, was to invite people to the possibility that they can be who they are in ways that they may not have thought they could. Right. And I said, "Since when?" And she said, "Basically, since forever." And I talked a little bit about that last week, about how I thought that my role in life was to build towards marrying a Frenchman and live in Paris and translate or interpret or whatever. Come to find out at the ripe age of 21, that not only had not happened, but wasn't likely to. And then the second step was to kind of follow my mom's life. She was working in Washington as a lobbyist. So I got involved in national politics, and I did that for a long time until finally in my 30s, I came to Denver to go to school. And, I tell parents that I told this mom that story because I was living here by that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, 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 yeah. So I was talking with a woman the other day who I offer free 15-minute consults. I think this was yesterday. And she told me that she's been in really abusive relationships for a long time, not only with partners, but also with bosses. And she told me about her last employer who literally locked her in a room, right? Wouldn't let her get out until she finished doing something that he wanted her to do. I can't remember what it was. And what she asked for was help. It really, my words, not hers, inviting something different into her life, like not replaying that same old tape of abusive relationships, whether it's with a spouse, a partner, a parent, a colleague, a boss,
Even your
whatever.
kids,
Your
right? Like
kids.
I've been a part of a lot of the things that you do, and there's even abuse from child to parent.
Yeah. And that also happens at the other end of the spectrum of life. Can't remember what it's called. Adult abuse, old age abuse, geriatric abuse, maybe. I can't remember, but where kids abuse their parents who are sort of slipping. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And she wanted something different.
She wanted something different. And I said, first of all, this is sort of a tall order for 15 minutes. But I want I want to leave you with a hope and the knowing that you can't actually change it. And the work actually begins with you, right? And for me, I've been in, same with the relationships. Have you ever been involved in a relationship and just sworn off and said, I am never going to go out with a guy like that ever, 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 ever again? And then the next one, same guy, maybe different hair color, different height, different work, you know, and yet it was the same thing
Yeah.
over and over and over again. And that's what I meant about quality of connection. Like a lot of times we get hardwired for those kinds of connections. And we think that those kinds of connections equal love or relationship or whatever. And it really is possible to let those go when you're willing to be the you that nobody is youer than you, that you, when you're willing to be that you get to have a completely different life. And it's not instantaneous. It takes practice and it takes kindness and it takes a curiosity, a willingness. One of the huge things that it takes is the capacity to not make yourself wrong, to not judge yourself,
Right.
you know. But what does that have to do with being a parent? When you parent from the point of view that you have to be somebody that's not actually who you are, what are you teaching
Mhm.
your kids?
Right. You teach them that the most effective tool they have is being someone else.
Right? Right. And
Ugh.
there's nothing wrong with faking it if
Right.
it, like I've watched little kids like flutter their eyelashes and smile at a relative that they really don't like, but that relative happens to be holding a candy or a toy that the kid wants.
Right. That's
You
just
know,
smart.
it's just smart.
Yeah.
But the trick is to use it as a tool in those circumstances and not feel like you have to become it, you know?
Right. And you've talked about this before around kids like spidey senses, like energy
Yeah.
incongruence, or I'm not sure how you put it, but they're so aware of that too, right? Like
So
that's really crunchy in their worlds. Would you just speak to that for a sec, Anne? I think it's interesting. It's
yeah,
definitely not
yeah.
the connection thing a bit.
Well, it really is a connection thing a bit because for the past 10 or 12 years, I've spent a lot of time traveling around the world and working with a group and teaching classes and workshop shops. And this was, I think, was in 2014. I was in Copenhagen and I was there for two classes that I was actually doing some work with. They took place in a basement, if you will, of a huge building. And the basement had black painted cement floor, no curtains or anything. It was windowless. And so there was really nothing to soak up the sound, is what I'm saying.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And there were between 200 and 250 people maybe in the room. And as the beginning of the class is starting to build, there are more and more people. The room is getting louder and louder. And then all of a sudden there is this blood curdling scream. And everybody turns around and there's a little dude in a stroller who's probably year and a half, who doesn't want to be in the room. And every time his mom takes him out of the room, he stops screaming. And every time she tries to go past the registration desk and find a place to sit, he lets out this just
Yeah.
howl of outrage and anger. And it's that kind of scream that gets you viscerally, where your whole body is like, "Wah." And the facilitator grabbed a mic and said, "Hey, you guys, it's really okay. How many of you were given permission to be that angry when you were little?" Right? Because the mom listened to him. She left.
Yeah.
Right? And so much of connection is actually listening, listening to what they're saying. And that spidey sense, listening to what they're saying that goes beyond either what they're saying verbally or what they're saying in terms of volume, in terms of shriek.
Mhm. Mhm.
But what are they actually saying? That's one of the things in my therapy practice, behavior is a form of communication. The thing is never the thing that's announced at the first session. My child's coming here because
Right.
he's disrespectful. Okay. That's never the thing. There's always something else that's going on. Or my child's coming here because he cries all night long. Okay, that's not the thing. That's a symptom of the thing, right? So the spidey, back to the spidey sense of kids, I don't know about you, but I grew up in a home where my dad was a drinking alcoholic. And for the first 6 years of my life, things were really crazy. And I know that on some level, I tried to fix it all because that's the role I sort of took on in my family, like mission control, mission central. And I was
Mhm.
like that for years and years as the family expanded to, it included whole sibling, half siblings, and then ultimately foster or not foster step siblings, and that spidey sense that there was something really bad wrong going on. And then there was my mom. She had two kids, two stepkids, two dogs, two cats, and a husband that was just crazy drunk, like throwing things around the house, crashing into furniture,
Mhm.
just insane. Her point of view was, it's not that bad. It's really okay. And we're not going to let anybody know about it, and blah, blah, blah. And my spidey sense was, oh my God, it is so bad. It is so much worse. Right?
Right, that discrepancy. That she
Discrepancy
sort of
between what is and what you're given permission to acknowledge.
right.
So part of connection is what you and I do with each other. I was really basically asking for help. That's why I called you, Chelsey. I couldn't do it. It was so awful. And you started laughing. And then you said, you want me to do it with you, right? But that's a lot of connection. It's being able to ask for help
Right.
and being able to receive it, right? And for
Yeah.
me, not thinking I'm a big damn failure because I can't do a podcast on my own about connection. Oh, what a surprise.
Yeah. Right, so it's that nonverbal and
That's
like,
sense.
it's kind of that spidey sense thing.
Spidey sense. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
the way. So, what is spidey sense? Spidey sense is when you know what the other person's actually needing and you offer it. That's spidey sense. Another one is you start a sentence and somebody finishes it. Another one is you think about them and they call you or you run into them. Right. Another one is you know exactly what they're going to say before they even say it, and bloop, out it comes.
And
Right.
young kids, I mean, young kids and moms and dads with really young kids probably get it the
That
clearest because it's
well,
like second nature to know when to pick up. Like you're almost functioning at that level. For
you
me, at
have
least
to.
for the first year, you have to. You go, they can't talk to you, so they are spidey
True.
sensing you, talking to you through those vibes, that energy all the time. We wouldn't be on this planet. And children would literally not make it past their first birthday if people didn't get this on the level that they
Right.
actually really know they
Exactly.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, and to not take it all personally either. Like one of my favorite stories is that guy that took his, I don't know, year-old son to the store to pick up some milk or something really innocuous. And there was a bright, shiny object that the little guy wanted. I don't know whether it's a toy or candy, I don't know what it was. And he leaned down to grab it, and the dad goes, and sort of turns away. And the dad said, the kid just stopped moving except he filled his lungs up with all the oxygen in the store and just let out this howl of rage like his back was arced over. Dad's holding him and looking at him and going, wow, admiring his son's the bellow that came out of that tiny little body. And that's a little bit like that kid that was screaming in Copenhagen and didn't want to be in the room, to have parents that actually listen to you and
Yeah.
don't make you wrong for it. Right. The mom
Yeah.
ended up coming back late to the class because she found a babysitter. I'm sure she came back without the kid.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm. Cool.
like that. And I get that those are both parents who are relatively well connected with who they are. And the thing about a kid is when you blink, they change. And
Right.
there are stages of child development, of psychosocial development that run from birth to death. And the first five occur before the age of 21, and the first two are before the age of 3.
Wow.
It's like there is just massive change. And you think about a baby being born that really just knows how to suck and maybe stretch some limbs or fingers or something out, to go from there to be a functioning grown up person out in the world doing whatever it is that they do, physically, emotionally, intellectually, whatever,
Mhm.
sky's the limit, whatever their choice is, whatever their bent is. So as a parent, you're not wrong. They're changing all the time. And just because it worked 2 seconds ago doesn't mean it's going to work now. And just because it doesn't work now doesn't mean you're a bad parent.
Yeah. And for the connection with yourself thing, for
Yeah.
fellow moms everywhere,
Yeah.
if you just, I'm talking about a friend of mine. If you if you happen to have somehow
Friends
lost
asking.
that
Asking for
connection with yourself, how do we get that back?
So you were talking about the spidey sense and
Yeah.
responding to your kids' needs, knowing the difference between a dirty diaper cry and an I'm hungry cry and get this awful person out of my face cry and I'm tired
Uh-huh.
cry, like all those different cries, recognizing that in yourself
Uh-huh. Okay.
and giving yourself whatever is required in the moment. This weekend, I asked my body and I ask the universe or God or spirit, whatever it is that you want to call it, do I do this? Yes or no? And it's a tool that I learned from a friend of mine whose name is Gary Douglas, who's created this whole system of amazing tools that we can talk about at some point. But anyway, I function really from yes, no. And I got no. If I was going to go out Saturday night, yes or no. And I got a big no. And I went out anyway, and my back hurts so bad, right? Which is what my body does when I ignore it. I ask and then I ignore it. Didn't give me the
Mhm.
answer that I wanted, so I went out anyway. And then there's payback.
Mhm.
And the connection with myself was the next morning. I didn't do a couple of things that I'd planned on doing, and I just stayed home. And I took a
Ah,
salt bath, like my body really was sore. On a basic level. I didn't get in the shower until 2 in the afternoon. I can't even remember what I did, but there was no drive, boom, 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 gotta get this.
mhm. So
So
that feedback can even be, grouchy,
yeah,
not happy, do something you really love. That's
yeah,
as easy as it can be to have to restore that connection or to just get back to the you or the you.
yes,
Cool.
exactly. Something
Cool.
that you really love, unless whatever it is that you really love is the doing of it is stressing you out. Like, sometimes
Right. Yeah.
you just need to stop. And it may be just stop and take a deep breath and cuddle your kid and read stories or watch a movie or leave them alone, or if they don't want to cuddle and you happen to have a puppy, cuddle with a puppy, whatever the thing is.
Literally just shut your laptop. Sometimes it's
That's the
just
start.
the
That's the start.
actual movement of closing my laptop.
And then
Sometimes
turning
is
off the phone and assuming
yeah.
that everybody in your immediate world is accounted for.
Mhm.
No man is an island, including me, including the most competent of us. I think of myself as incredibly competent on the one hand, and on the other hand, as a miserable failure because I haven't done everything that I think I should. That there is no kindness there, none,
And no connection to you.
and no connection to me. It's the either or, black and white. You're either in or you're out. No, sometimes you just take a deep breath, look at the trees.
That was great. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to this and for going on this journey with, at this point, us.
Yes, thank you for inviting me to be on this journey with you.
Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to hear from you. If you'd like, you can connect with me below in the comments section. And if you'd like more information about me, please go to my website at www.nmaxwelllcsw.com.